Goa Bar Association members, Women's Cell, Miss Lydia Sardesai. Ma'am, you're making sure that we all stay fit and active. Miss Norma Alvarez, Senior Advocate. What an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me, for having me here. And to all of you who've come here today on a fine Saturday morning, to of course witness these 4 extraordinary Goans who are felicitated, whose inspiring work makes me believe that it's one of them who should be giving this talk and not me. But thank you so much for coming out on this lovely Saturday morning in Goa. Now, when Senior Advocate Norma Alvarez contacted me about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, ma'am, I was expecting that call because I thought she was calling me about the internship application that I had sent to the Goa Foundation 24 years ago. Now, as a practicing lawyer, we are used to delayed relief. 24 years at the Supreme Court, not surprising. So when Miss Alvarez said, could you come and speak, I thought it was part of my internship obligations. So just think of me as a middle-aged intern at the Goa Foundation. Thank you, Ms. Alvarez, for the invitation, and to the Women's Cell, and thank you for everything that you've done and that you continue to do. We all know, of course, that in 1987, the Goa Foundation, which wasn't the Goa Foundation at that time, had filed the first public interest litigation in Goa. And so we all, on every side of the bar, irrespective of who we represent or who we defend, look up to colleagues like you for setting the standard of endurance, commitment, and craft. Now, Sapon is a very nice way, ma'am, to think of equality. Not just love and romantic love, but also of equality. Because on this fine Saturday, which is also Women's Day, and happy Women's Day to all the women and all the men here today. But Sapon is very nice because any visionary, any woman practicing law, any woman in any occupation actually has one dream, Sapon, of just a more comfortable, a more egalitarian workspace, a more egalitarian home space. So for me, Sapon, as the framers of our constitution conceived of this country of political, social equality, legal equality, is also that wonderful space of equality, hopefully at the bar, right? So in 1916, I'm going to talk about just 3 things. The Advocate General, before he left, asked me, how long will you speak? You know, there is lunch. So I promise you, this is a short talk, and you will all comfortably eat lunch. The journey of women practicing law was never a given. In 1916, Regina Guha, it's a name we should all remember, male practitioners of the law and women practitioners of the law. Regina Guha challenged the fact that the reins of the legal profession were in the hands of men alone. And she submitted an application to be enrolled as a pleader, which was rejected. In 1921, a second challenge came from Sudhanshu Bala Hazra, who wanted to be accepted also as a pleader. Cornelia Sorabji would soon become the first woman to be accepted as a pleader in the Allahabad High Court, admittedly in a very narrow area of practice. We'll talk about it. 1923 is a very important year for women who practice law and men who practice law with us, because the Legal Practitioners Act, by an amendment, which is the Legal Practitioners in brackets Women's Act, removed the ban on women practicing law. In 1937, Anna Chandy would become India's first female woman judge, appointed as a Munsif judge in Travancore. And on 9th February 1959, Justice Chandy would become the first woman amongst all Commonwealth nations to be appointed to the Kerala High Court. On 6th October 1989, Fatima Bibi was the first woman to be appointed a Supreme Court Justice of India and in any Asian country. She would also be the first Muslim woman in the judiciary. What has this journey been so far? The Supreme Court has had 11 women judges in 75 years. 4% of a total of 276 judges, Justice Mehta. Justice Ruma Pal would serve as the longest. She would have a tenure of 6.3 years. The first woman Chief Justice will be Justice Nagaratna in 2027 for 36 days. In the Supreme Court, 9.4%, 3 out of 32 judges as of December 2023 were women. And women's representation in the high courts has increased from 10% in 2018 to 13.4% in 2023. And in the district judiciary, which is really the face of the judiciary that most Indian citizens will encounter, the increase has been 27.6% in 2018 to 36.3% in 2023. And last year was the first year that the Delhi district judiciary would have more women than men. So those are the numbers. And numbers matter. When you have lack of representation, numbers matter greatly. Because these numbers also percolate across other areas of representation, not just gender, but also caste, scheduled tribe, OBC judges at different levels of the judiciary. Let's examine these numbers. Out of 1,389 seats advertised for Civil Judge Junior Division, 766 posts were advertised for reserved categories. Of this, almost 66.3% of all overall seats remain unfilled. The maximum number of seats that lay vacant were from the scheduled tribe category at a shocking 84.5%. Shocking. In the High Court, 492 out of 650 judges were appointed between 2018 to 2023 belonged to the general category. Of the 698 High Court judges appointed since 2018, 108 are women judges, 22 belong to scheduled caste, 15 to scheduled tribe, 87 to OBC. And 79% of High Court judges identify as upper caste. Now, when I think about these numbers, I'm not proclaiming a case for reservation. I'm not proclaiming a case for just a set aside. I'm asking you to think about whether an institution where the average Indian comes for justice should be as unrepresentative as this. And what does it mean for that institution to lack this representation and to not look like the society that it seeks to adjudicate. What does it mean for legitimacy? What does it mean for credibility? What does it mean for the ability to identify with the litigants before you? And what does it mean for the life experiences that are prioritized and that are given voice to on the bench? But there are more shocking statistics as well. Now in 2019, very happy day for me and my family when I was designated a senior advocate, I found out to my shock that at the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court had only designated 12 women senior advocates till that day, since the inception of the court from 1950. So, the statistics are this. My father is an economist. I believe in statistics because I do think that they may not tell complete stories, but they tell very important stories. As of March 2023, India has 3,149 senior advocates across the Supreme Court and all high courts. 3.4% or 106 women are senior advocates. As on date, the Supreme Court has 19 women senior advocates. The Calcutta High Court has 4 designated women senior advocates out of a total of 422. The Bombay High Court has 8 women senior advocates, of which only 4 are still actively practicing in Maharashtra. The Madras High Court has 10 women senior advocates out of 299. Southern, northern, central states' representation of women is actually abysmally low when it comes to that lovely gown with the hood. Now, my family is a little different. We are a family of 4. We are 2 seniors and 2 minors, right? Now, it becomes important, right? Because families play a big role in why women continue in the profession or why they don't continue in the profession. And this is important. As I was being driven here from the hotel to this stall, there were 2 young lawyers who opted to spend a part of their Saturday morning picking us up and bringing us here. And I said, well, what is it like at the bar? What is it like to practice law? And why are more women not practicing law? So they said, ma'am, more women not practicing law? In fact, lesser women are now practicing law. And part of it, this young lawyer told me, she said part of it is because they are overwhelmed by the responsibilities of the home and of children. Now, Arundhati and I, we have young children. And I must tell you that we are always eternally grateful to Goa. Arundhati Kadru, of course, is a senior advocate, sets the bar very high in my home of both parenting as well as litigation. But we are very grateful to Goa for other reasons as well. We have often visited Goa with our kids, and both our children saw the ocean for the first time in Goa. It was also the last time both our children were silent. Since then, they have been talking non-stop. So for us, coming back to Goa is always a pleasant experience because it is like a second home for our family. But the reason why I bring up families is because without navigating the complexities of the home, of parenting, and of families, without that, women will not continue to practice law. And the big loss we see at the bar is women between the ages of 30 and 40 or 45. Those are the child-rearing ages. And without there being more equality in the home and an equal partnership in the home, you will not have women sustaining and persisting at the bar. So perhaps the most important choice that a young woman lawyer will ever make, apart from the choice of your senior, 2 of your juniors, Priyanka actually brought us here. So apart from this choice of a senior, the most important choice you will make is that of a partner. A partner who supports your occupational choices, a partner who will share work in the home, and a partner who will actually encourage you to continue to practice law. Because the practice of law between judges, clients, solicitors, adversaries, adversarial litigation is, shall we say, not for the faint-hearted. And it is certainly a profession for women. Now, what is also changing, Norma, is the world of the law. And you have a lot of law students here. What is also changing is that the CLAT, the Common Law Admission Test, has highlighted a shift in preferences. In 2024, 57% of the candidates who took the CLAT, who appeared in it, were girls, compared to a decade ago when there were only 32%. So more and more girls are coming to law school. More and more girls are going to graduate. And more girls will come to the bar. So the numbers are slowly changing. We know, as women who've been practicing law, and I'm approaching, I think, the 28th year of my practice, 29th year, or something thereabouts. We know that it is not just enough to come to the bar. There are different facets of building a practice. As any man or any woman who has his or her own independent practice will tell you, that there are many different facets. It is about attracting clients. It is about retaining clients. It is about being persuasive before judges. Justice Mehta looks serious at this point. I'm waiting to be persuaded by a good legal argument. This has only been numbers so far. It is about persuading judges. It is about withstanding the adversarial nature of the courtroom. It is about continuing to read the brief, continuing to explore a diverse areas of law practice. And it is also, amid all of this, of retaining your integrity as not just a lawyer, but also a human being. And those are high demands to be made on any profession. And those are the demands of the legal profession. Today, as of 2022, in response to a question raised in the Lok Sabha, 15.31% of all enrolled advocates are women. But remember, 57% of all those who take the CLAT exam are girls. So there is a transformation that is underway as I speak. Now, why does representation matter? This is the question. Why does diversity matter? Why does representation matter? Why does a more diverse judiciary matter? And it matters greatly. Please see, in a very important case called the State NCT of Delhi versus Pankaj Chaudhary, for the first time, an all-female bench comprising Justices Bhanumati and Indira Banerjee held that promiscuity / habituation to sexual intercourse of a prosecutrix cannot be a ground to justify rape. And the bench would say there can be no presumption of a woman being of loose character merely because she has had sexual intercourse before. Further, the bench would tell us that even if the prosecutrix has been habituated to sexual intercourse, she has a right to deny and a right not to consent to sex. This was a case where the conviction by previous courts, the lower courts, had been set aside. In Joseph Shine versus Union of India, Justice Indu Malhotra, as part of a constitution bench, would strike down adultery as a criminal offence, then section 497 of the Indian Penal Code, and would state that 497 fails to consider both men and women as equally autonomous individuals in society. She observed that the time when wives were invisible to the law and lived in the shadows of their husbands had long gone by. A legislation, she said, that perpetuates such stereotypes in relationships and institutionalizes discrimination is a clear violation of the fundamental rights guaranteed by Part 3 of the Constitution. Justice Malhotra would also give a widely read dissent in the famous Sabrimala case that this same Constitution bench would give. And it is important that she wrote a brave judgment dissenting from her other 4 brother judges as allowing women into the famous Sabrimala temple. I think both these judgments of hers are equally important because it is important to have this diversity on the bench, a diversity in the context of gender as it pertains to sexual offences, but a diversity of opinion even in the context of faith as it pertains to cases that go to a constitutional court. This diversity on the bench comes from different life experiences, and that is what is important. The different life experiences that judges who are women, judges who are of different varied castes will bring to the bench from having had these experiences in their own professional and personal lives. And a judiciary which is too far removed from the society that it seeks to serve is a judiciary that will lack any real connection with that society, that it not just seeks to serve and that it seeks to adjudicate upon, but it also seeks to speak of. And that is why representation matters greatly. In its most recent decision, and a decision that I would commend all of you to read, in the case Sarita Chaudhary versus the High Court of Madhya Pradesh, a 2024 judgment by the Supreme Court, the bench was Justice Nagaratna and Justice Koteshwar Singh. And it pertained to the reinstatement of 2 women judges. The original case pertained to 6, and this case pertained to the 2 who were not reinstated with back wages. So the denial of reinstatement of these 2 women judges had not been considered favorably by the High Court. And the High Court cited a number of issues allegedly with their performance. Justice Nagaratna and Justice Koteshwar Singh would say this, and their judgment is actually a judgment which speaks to an equality manifesto. They would say this, that we have to understand the factors that hinder women's effective participation in the judiciary. Justice Nagaratna and Singh would write, it is the barriers of the entry of women into the legal profession. It is the barriers about retention of women in the profession and the advancement of women in numbers to senior levels of the profession. They would both write there are consequences, positive consequences, of increased diversity within judiciary because it enables, in their words, the judiciary as a whole to better respond to diverse social, economic and individual contexts and experiences and improve the quality of decision making, especially in cases affecting women. Justices Nagaratna and Singh would also write that female judicial appointments, particularly at senior levels, can shift gender stereotypes, thereby changing attitudes and perceptions as to appropriate roles of men and women. Women's visibility, they say, as judicial officers can pave the way for women's greater representation on other decision-making positions, such as in legislative and executive branches of government. Finally, they would say, higher numbers and greater visibility of women judges can increase the willingness of women to seek justice and enforce their rights through the courts. They would look to not just Article 11 of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, but they would look to 2 wonderful decisions given by the then Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, Ministry of Defence versus Babita Punia, 2020, and Nitisha versus Indian Army. Both decisions speak to the admission of women in the Indian Army as permanent commissioned officers. And I must add that at this moment there are cases pending on women as permanently commissioned officers to the Navy and to the Air Force that we are now still taking to court. Now the reason for these numbers, right, and the reason for these decisions is that I'd like to highlight the disparity in not just certain segments of the bar and certain segments of the district judiciary becoming judges of the High Court or the Supreme Court, but it is also peculiarly at odds with the vision of our Constitution. And I want to end with this, that India's Constitution, adopted in 1950, was not just unique, but it was also quite radical and revolutionary. Why? Because our conception of equality, and I say this with great pride, our Indian conception of constitutional equality, unlike America's, was not about formal equality. It was not about comparing unlikes similarly. Our conception of equality, which is substantive equality, spoke to making reparations for caste discriminations, thousands of years of caste discrimination through reservation. It also spoke to making a simple principle as the guiding value of our constitutional ethos, that you would not compare unlikes the same. And by unlikes we mean you would not take the advantaged and the disadvantaged and put them together and say, let's treat them equally. That you would make amends, you would make reparations through facets like reservation, but you would do that and make it possible to have enhanced representation in institutions. I believe that that enhanced representation in institutions should include the judiciary, should include the bar, and should include both these facets. That we need more women judges, we need more senior women lawyers, we need more designated women senior advocates, and we need men and women to work together as colleagues at the bar and at the bench to make that possible. In 2019, when I became a senior advocate, it was a shock to me that there had only been 11 or 12 before me. I would hope that by 2039, we can have a chaperon of a different profession, a different discipline of the law, with more women on the bench, with more women practicing law, and with more women being able to come back from taking breaks in the profession to raise their children, to continue to build an active legal career. Thank you very, very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Menaka. I think that since we have a person coming from a long distance to address us on a topic particularly which the younger generation needs to get into their system, so to speak, I thought that if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask to Dr. Guruswamy, the opportunity is now. No questions? Wait. Let me give them 30 seconds. No questions from the students? Thank you. There. Just give a mic to him. You don't get such opportunities often. So please think, students, there's anything else anything that you'd like to ask.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Sankalp Gaonkar. I am from Sankalp Gaonkar. I am from VM Salgaonkar College. So my question is that today you have said there are many hindrances, there are many barriers for women to enter into law profession. So here there are many senior lawyers. here there are many aspirant lawyers, the young generation. So what can we do at our level to ensure that more women can participate, more women can freely, enter this profession?
Yeah. Thank you. What year of law school are you in, Sankalp?
VM Salgaonkar College of Law.
And which year are you in?
Fourth year.
Fourth year. So one more year to go.
Yeah, one more year to go.
See, I think that's a lovely question, right? The barriers to articulating yourself as a woman start early. Right? They start in law school. You'll see all the hands that go up in law school are mostly men. Shivam is just shifting a little uncomfortably. It's mostly men. And the women who ask questions, I used to be one of them, are kind of, looked at a little strangely. Oh, all the women lawyers who practice are like, happens in court too. Yes. Sorry, what is your name, ma'am? Amira. Happened to you in law school? Priyanka ji, must have happened to you also. Norma, no, nobody dared. Look at Norma strangely. The Advocate General and the President of the Bar is being very silent in this one. The real thing is it starts in law school. And I'm actually sure it starts in school. It's very interesting, Norma. We have a daughter and a son. Now, in the younger years, you'll actually see that girls are very strong, sturdy, articulate. They're like little gundas. My daughter is a little gunda. The UP Gangsters Act was made for her. It's a legislation of one. Right? But as they get into middle school and high school, something seems to change. I asked a friend of mine, who's also a senior advocate, a woman from Karnataka, so what happens? And she says, by the time your daughter will get to high school, what is important changes. What is she wearing? What does she look like? What is the role she's playing? The pressure starts young. There is study after study that shows that social media is particularly harmful for the mental health of young girls. More than young boys. Young girls. So the question is not what is happening just in the courtroom. The courtroom reflects the society that it's a part of. The question is what is happening in your own home. How many of you are telling your son and your daughter, you can do anything you want. You can be anyone you want. So, I think it has to start early. We hope you will implement that Sankalp in your own classroom in year 4. Okay, more questions. Nobody has any more. Oh yes, ma'am. Yes.
My hands are actually shivering.
Shivering. So am I. Mine are sweaty also. I had to wear a jacket. Norma said, no, just shirt. Right. Look respectable.
The shivering is not because of the AC over here.
Can't hear you, ma'am.
The shivering is not because of the AC over here.
Yeah.
The shivering is because the dignitaries who are sitting here.
Yes, I'm also intimidated. Yes, letters here.
Yeah, and the privilege I have got.
Advocates.
And the privilege I have got seeing the woman crowning the other woman. The very important part of our society. Myself, Sujata Poste from Khare College. And after 18 years, I have joined college back.
Wow.
I'm a mother of... I'm a mother of 2 sons. My son is sitting for a 10th board now.
Wow, scary. Scary.
But the thing, I wanted to speak here. I spoke to my ma'am, respected ma'am. I asked her, ma'am, can I ask this question? This is not the place to ask, but I wanted that. It came from my heart. I see today how many of us, I wanted to ask myself, how many of us, we women, crown another woman? How many of us clap for another woman?
Yeah. Good
How
point.
many of us uplift another woman?
Good point.
Because until unless we ourselves, we women, don't stand for another woman, the statistics what you have brought on the table in front of us would never go above 60%. The graph will help us grow only when we are supporting another woman.
True.
Yeah, and every year I have seen I be a part of many international women programs like this. I think we should come up with one of the themes. Let's grow together.
Yes.
Let's uplift each other. Let's motivate each other. Let's inspire each other. This makes a difference. This does makes a difference. And it starts from our own houses. Today ma'am said the family plays a very important role while supporting a woman. I think we women have also made our mind like this, that our family is dependent on us. No. We have to make them realize that no, you are not dependent on us.
Correct.
Today you can wash utensils if we can wash utensils.
Could you talk to my daughter, please? I'll put her in touch with you. She's not washing any utensils.
So I have 3 boys at my house, yeah, including my husband. And they have learned that women's career, women's dreams, equally important, and I think we women have to bring that change. And I would request the organizations who are coming up, do come up with some themes, because it gives a great message to the society. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
On the same lines that she was talking, I always find that, you gave the statistics of a large number of women who are competing at the CLAT exams and so on. And many of them become lawyers, they come to court, you see them all as juniors, but they eventually end up carrying files back and forth, at the most asking for an adjournment, at the most saying I'm holding for somebody else. What comes in the way of these young women, brilliantly talented, who take exams? And I remember my early practice at the High Court. I had a case where the police department was recruiting candidates, and there were X number of seats, and there were 5 reservations for women. But the organization which I'm a part of, Bailan Society, we said some women wanted to compete in the open category, and they were not being allowed. They were told you have to compete in the reserved category. So we went to court, and Justice Bhatta was there on the bench. And then he said, Mrs. Alvarez, as it is, you girls in the exams at the 10th, girls top the list, girls stand first, girls take all the career. What will our poor boys do if you compete in the open category? So I said, well, we think we are good enough. He says, you are better than good. That's my worry. Well, anyway, he gave me the orders that I wanted and so on. But that is the problem I find. A lot of women study, they top the list, they come up, they come to court, and then they fade away. I have in my office, in the early years, I remember, we had young women, and then of course they get pregnant, you have a baby. And I always told them, take your leave, take 2 years if you want, nurture your baby and come back. I myself came back to the law after 10 years, 3 boys and then 10 years. I mean, I brought them up and then came back at... Claude was the 4th, but he was a decent parent, helped out with putting the babies to sleep and feeding them and taking the early morning shift. 5 a.m. onwards, it was his duty. But that apart, what I'm saying is, I don't know what happens, whether young women are not willing to take the brief and say, I would like to argue, or whether families. I liked what you said about support from the home. It's important. But your thoughts on it?
Yeah, there's one other thing, right? And I think support from the home is really important. I think there are 2 other aspects to this, and they're important aspects. One, I think you have to see images that you can identify with, images of success. When you have more successful women arguing, more and more women will want to argue. Younger women will emulate that, saying, I can also do this. Right? So that's the first thing. That's why representation matters greatly. But the second thing is, I think that, it's also about the chamber system. Right? And it is about all of us as senior advocates. And, we have juniors in our chambers. It is about having these conversations with them. It is about helping your juniors, both male and female, but especially female, saying you can argue. And the game is making the argument. You know, so you're absolutely right. I see many, many more young women saying, I'm here for so-and-so senior and I want to pass over. And today now in the Supreme Court, you will see judges actually encouraging young juniors, both male and female, to argue the case. But even here, I see more young men who are willing to take that chance. Even though the judge is not going to rule and penalize your client. I mean, this is the thing, right? This is the thing. Because, you know, the senior is not there, the junior wants to argue. So I tell my juniors, know the brief. Even if you're taking the passover, be ready to argue. Because I think the ambition is not just about enduring in the profession. It's not just that. The ambition is to argue cases and is to argue a variety of cases. I recommend the practice of criminal law to all women. This is my recommendation. Why? Because it is meticulous. Criminals, gangsters don't judge. They want relief. It's very good if you're diligent, if you're organized, if you can make a compelling argument, you will get relief and you will have a very grateful gangster in your debt. It is a wonderful way to be. Hi, what's your name?
My name is Judicial. Judicial. And I'm a student of VM Salgaonkar College of Law. Ma'am, I wanted to highlight one of the settings we were discussing over here. What are the difficulties that we face when we want to come up? One of the difficulties which I have faced personally is that even if I have an idea, I want to go ahead, I want to talk about women's thing, about POSH, I find it difficult to get permissions from the authorities, because even if I am convinced as to what I want to do and how I want to do, I have to convince them, and by the time I come to convincing them and by the time they are convinced, the authority gets changed.
Yeah.
And then the entire order starts.
Yeah, it happens in district courts too. Judges keep getting transferred. You made a whole argument. No, look, it's hard, right? I mean, now the Supreme Court has a gender sensitization committee, which addresses cases of POSH. It's in the Supreme Court. And I think the idea behind it is that every High Court must also, I don't know, Norma, if the Goa High Court, so it's now every High Court, and I'm on that committee, and we work with different High Courts. But you know, this is a work in progress, right? Obviously, we'd hope that administrations and law schools, where there are so many women today, would be more responsive. But you know, you are part of the change that is happening. Look, you've stood up, you've made the case. There are two people from the same law school. Here's your ally, meet each other, have a conversation, and make a case to your authorities. One or two questions. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. I'm Dr. Anjana Ferram, professor from Salgaonkar Law College. I guess most of you know me here.
Nice to meet you.
I would like to know your journey, Dr. Menaka, from
My journey.
A law school student to the most distinguished counsel as senior advocate of the law.
I think my other colleagues would have a problem.
Three qualities that took you there and make you for what we know you as. A wonderful speech today, and it has been an honor for me always following your journey. So if you could share with us those three qualities.
So one, I have to tell you, I really like being a lawyer. I love being a lawyer, right? And I think that's always been the case. So, you know, I think you should absolutely love what you do. You know, whether you are a lawyer or a doctor, it helps to love your occupation that much. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that you cannot, absolutely cannot give up. And you cannot back down. You will win, you will lose. And by that I don't just mean cases. I mean moments, clients, briefs. You know, this is an ongoing journey. But it's important not to take it too personally. It's important to know that you are fabulous. right? So I think that's the second bit of it. And the third bit of it is very, very, very important. Pick the perfect partner. I cannot highlight this enough. I cannot highlight this enough, right? So I am extremely lucky. You know, Arundhati is not just a distinguished senior advocate. She is not just a better counsel than I am, a better parent than I am. But you know, the fact that you have someone who is in your corner all the time, I think is hugely important. Hugely important. So I think that is also very important. And I think the last thing, and this I learned from my own senior. My senior was a senior advocate from the Bombay High Court. Ashok Desai would become Attorney General of India. And the one thing that he taught me, I went to work for him when I was 19 years old. 19 years old. And I learned many things from him. Courtcraft, books, painters. He showed me a book on Sousa. The first book I read on Sousa. You know, that he taught me something so important. Do not over-celebrate victories because you will deeply mourn the losses. Detachment from what you do, and I know it's very hard, is incredibly important. And do it with a sense of humor. He was hilarious, and I'm not bad at cracking jokes.
Okay, then the lady there would put up her hand.
Hello, this is Garvita from Indian International University of Legal Research and Education.
Very impressive.
Okay, so my question would be, we often hear that women need to work twice as hard to be just taken seriously, particularly the need to be assertive. So do you believe those numbers are changing or any changes coming on?
You still have to work twice as hard. There's no question. You know, we are trying to change things. We are trying hard to change things. But, you know, it is going to take time. And you have to also walk the path. You have to come to the bar. You have to argue cases, not take passovers, not carry files. Carry your own files, argue your own cases. So it is going to take time, but it is changing. It is changing. Look, let me be clear. I don't have to belabor this point. I am not the norm in any jurisdiction of lawyers. Any jurisdiction, I am not the norm. I am a designated senior advocate. My partner is a woman, we have 2 children, we are both designated senior advocates. We have great practices. So if my story is possible, your story is possible. You have to believe that. And then you have to take ownership about the space you occupy as a lawyer. That's the point. You may have to work twice as hard, but the lesson is do not give an inch. One last question.
Now from Shivan.
Shivan.
I have to give it to...
Yes.
Yeah, first and foremost, very well spoken.
Thank you.
I can't let you go without
Nice
asking
suit,
this
Shiva.
question. So, with your vast experience internationally, you've been an alumnus of reputed international universities, and you practice international jurisdictions, developed jurisdictions. Just to get a sense of where we are on the topic that you spoke on.
Yeah.
Internationally, what's the scenario we're looking at? Is it an international issue? And just to get a sense of where we stand today in the most developed jurisdictions, what is the scenario?
Yeah. No, thank you for that question. I must tell you that I have known Shivan. Shivan, when did we do that lovely case together? 10 years ago. 2013. Shivan, I argued a case at the High Court, the old High Court. So, not this new beautiful High Court, the old High Court. And Shivan and I worked on this case together. Look, you know, obviously in other jurisdictions, right, like especially developed jurisdictions, there are certainly more women judges, there are certainly more women lawyers. But these issues of juggling home responsibilities and, you know, unilaterally juggling home responsibilities and work responsibilities are across the board. If you talk to German lawyers or a German constitutional court women judges, they will tell you the same thing, right? I think the question is, what are the interventions we're making as a profession to support women? The creche is a wonderful intervention. Flexible working hours is a wonderful intervention. How do we bridge that gap that women take off to when they have young kids? These are important interventions. Justice Chandrachud actually thought at some point that virtual courts enable more flexibility for women to be able to argue cases, right? So I think it is all of these things. In many developed jurisdictions, there are many more support systems. For instance, in Germany, paternity and maternity leave are both taken. So I'm not just talking about the law. It's across the board, across occupation. So what are the legislative interventions that are necessary? What are interventions at the bar that are necessary? So a instructing lawyer who is a good friend of mine is a single parent, and he's a father. He lost his wife. He has a daughter who's about my son's age, so she's about 7 or 8. And he said something so interesting. He said, you can't have the creche just for kids up to the age of 6. What happens at 7, 8, 9, 10? And it can't just be for women. I'm a single parent. That's what he said, you know. He introduced himself to my son as I am both mother and father to my daughter. So this is burdens on both sides, right? This is burdens on both sides of the spectrum. So it is about systemic changes both at the level of the bar, and we are a guild at the end of the day. I mean, that is what sets apart the bar, that we are a guild, we are here for each other. Younger colleagues can expect to be mentored and supported by us who are older at the bar, right? That is part of what we are expected to do. But these sorts of interventions to change the legal profession, to make it more supportive, have to be made.
Yeah. So thank you, Menaka. I think we have got more than our money's worth out of you. Brought you here, made you speak and answer our questions and so on. But thank you very, very much for your very enlightening talk and for giving everyone the ways and means by which we ourselves can change. The world is changing, and I believe changing for the better. In terms of gender equality, in terms of women coming forward, a vast, vast change from when I started practicing. But it takes yourself to come forward. No one's going to give it to you. With all the best intentions, your seniors will still perhaps not give it to you unless you say, I want it. I will argue this brief. I will practice it before you. I will give you my arguments. Please tell me if I have to say anything further. And there is a very encouraging bench generally for young people. So we have a bright future to look ahead. It's a steep climb, hard, not going to be without working twice as hard. I work twice as hard also, because I'm not sure. Against me are ranged 8 people on the other side and I'm one, so I got to think what 8 other people will say. So we work very hard, but it gives us immense satisfaction. And I like what you said about taking victories and failures with the same equanimity. In the same stride, you cannot be so proud that you succeeded because it was a judge who gave you the judgment. You had a good judge, you had somebody who understood, you managed to explain, and so on. So it's been a great start to the International Women's Day and the year ahead. And I'm so happy that all of you came, young students. You have something to look forward to. And we have a surprise. We have a cutting of a cake. This was our team's idea. And so may I invite Justice Nivedita. Libby Rodriguez, Libby Logo, you'll walk up again.